Look at your skin right now. Whatever shade it is, that color has a story. Not a short one, not a simple one. One of the longest, most dramatic biological negotiations in the history of the human species. And the thing that drove all of it was not race, not culture, not geography in the way most people think about it. It was a single molecule and a star that had absolutely no interest in being fair about it. Stay with me. Every single one of your ancestors, regardless of where you are from, regardless of what you look like today, had dark skin. Not most of them, not the majority. Every single one. When Homo sapiens first appeared in Africa around 300,000 years ago, the entire species was dark-skinned. There were no pale populations. There were no light-skinned people anywhere on Earth. The concept didn't exist yet. So what happened? To understand that, you need to understand what skin actually is, because most people treat it like packaging. The bag your body came in. It is not packaging. It is your largest organ, and it is doing dozens of essential jobs simultaneously, most of which you will never think about and never thank it for. One of those jobs is protecting you from UV radiation. UV radiation is the invisible energy the sun fires at Earth constantly, and it is not your friend. It breaks chemical bonds. It damages DNA. It causes mutations that, if they accumulate in the wrong places over enough time, become cancer. The pigment that gives skin its color is called melanin, and melanin is, in the most literal biological sense, a sunscreen, a natural built-in UV filter. The more melanin your skin contains, the darker it appears, and the more effectively it blocks UV radiation from reaching the deeper layers of tissue where your DNA lives. Dark skin is not just a color, it is a shield. This is why in Africa, sitting under some of the most intense UV radiation on the planet, evolution selected hard and fast for dark skin. More melanin meant better DNA protection. Better DNA protection meant less cancer. Less cancer meant living longer. Living longer meant more children. More children meant the trait survived. Natural selection does not care about aesthetics. It runs one calculation over and over across billions of organisms. Does this trait help you survive long enough to reproduce? In equatorial Africa, under that sun, dark skin was an emphatic yes. Every generation, without exception. But UV radiation doesn't only attack skin cells. It also destroys something inside the body, something small and invisible that, if you lose enough of it at the wrong moment, can end a pregnancy before it has really begun. That molecule is called folate, a form of vitamin B9. And it is essential for the development of the neural tube in embryos, the structure that becomes the brain and spinal cord. Without sufficient folate in the early weeks of pregnancy, sometimes before a woman even knows she is pregnant, the neural tube can fail to close properly. The consequences are catastrophic. UV radiation destroys folate. And in equatorial Africa, with no clothing, no shelter, no sunscreen, UV exposure was constant, intense, and unavoidable. Women with less melanin, less protection, had higher rates of folate destruction. Higher rates of folate destruction meant higher rates of developmental failure in pregnancy. Higher rates of developmental failure meant fewer surviving offspring. So now, there are two completely independent reasons why dark skin was non-negotiable under the African sun. 1. Melanin protected DNA from UV damage and reduced cancer risk. 2. Melanin protected folate in pregnant women and preserved reproductive success. 2 separate threats. 1 biological solution. Dark skin in Africa was not just useful, it was essentially mandatory. So why did it change? Between 70,000 and 100,000 years ago, groups of Homo sapiens began leaving Africa. Not in one dramatic event. No one organized it. It was slow generational drift. A group moves a little further than their parents. Their children move further still. Over thousands of years, humans spread north into Europe and Asia. And as they moved, something fundamental changed. The sun got weaker, not the sun itself. But at higher latitudes, sunlight hits Earth at a lower angle. It passes through more atmosphere. UV radiation is filtered out. Days are shorter. Winters are long and dark. The sky is overcast for months. In northern Europe, the UV environment is radically different from equatorial Africa. Instead of relentless, intense radiation, you need to block. You have weak intermittent radiation you desperately need to absorb. And suddenly, dark skin became a problem. Not because of cancer. Cancer risk at northern latitudes was much lower. Not because of folate. Less UV meant less folate destruction. The problem was something different, something that doesn't get nearly enough attention. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is synthesized in the skin when UVB radiation hits a specific compound. Your skin is literally a solar panel. It uses sunlight as an energy source to manufacture this essential molecule. And vitamin D is not optional. It regulates calcium absorption. Without it, bones don't mineralize correctly. In children, severe deficiency causes rickets, bones that soften and deform. In adult women, it softens the pelvic bones, making childbirth extraordinarily dangerous, sometimes impossible. Women with severe vitamin D deficiency died in labor at dramatically higher rates. Now place a dark-skinned person in Northern Europe 40,000 years ago. Their melanin blocks UV radiation beautifully, which was brilliant in Africa. But in the gray, overcast, low-light north, that same melanin is now blocking the very UV they need to synthesize vitamin D. The skin cannot tell the difference between dangerous UV it should block and useful UV it desperately needs. It just blocks. So they don't make enough vitamin D. Their bones weaken. Their children develop rickets. Women die in childbirth. The population starts declining. Dark skin in northern latitudes was not just a disadvantage. In a world without supplements, without fortified food, without medical intervention, it was a death sentence stretched across generations. And evolution, that cold and endlessly patient calculator, started selecting against it. Mutations that reduced melanin production began appearing randomly, but instead of being eliminated, they spread. Because individuals with slightly lighter skin synthesized slightly more vitamin D, had slightly healthier bones, had slightly higher reproductive success, generation after generation. Slightly lighter, slightly lighter, slightly lighter. Over thousands of years, skin tones drifted upward, not because anyone decided it should happen, not because of culture or preference, because in that specific environment, at that specific latitude, with that specific amount of sunlight, lighter skin kept more people alive. The algorithm had simply reversed its inputs. And here is the part that surprises almost everyone. The extremely fair skin associated with Northern Europeans today appears to have spread widely only in roughly the last 6,000 to 8,000 years. In the full 300,000-year history of our species, that is less than the last 3%. Something accelerated this process dramatically, and that something was farming. When humans switched from hunting and gathering to agriculture, their diet changed completely. Hunter-gatherers ate fatty fish, organ meats, shellfish, among the richest dietary sources of vitamin D in existence. Farming populations ate mostly cereals, wheat, barley, oats. Their dietary vitamin D intake collapsed. Now, populations that had been getting by because their food was also contributing vitamin D were almost entirely dependent on whatever their skin could produce. And if their skin was still fairly dark, that was not enough. The selection pressure for lighter skin intensified dramatically. Even the tiniest reduction in melanin became critically important, and farming communities were large and dense. A beneficial mutation spreads through thousands of descendants in just a few generations when your population is a network of connected farming villages. The dietary vitamin D collapse combined with population density hit the fast-forward button on depigmentation. Within a few thousand years, a process that had been moving slowly for tens of thousands of years suddenly became rapid and visible. Here's what all of this means. Skin color, the thing that has shaped political systems, justified atrocities, divided populations into hierarchies for millennia, is at its biological core a UV calibration system. It is a dial, an adjustment mechanism, your body's best estimate of how much UV protection you need given the latitude your ancestors lived at, the diet they ate, the sun they stood under. Dark skin is not less evolved. It is the original. the baseline, the configuration from which everything else is a modification. Lighter skin is not superior. In equatorial environments, it is actively dangerous. More UV penetration, more DNA damage, more cancer, more folate destruction. Every shade of human skin that exists today is the product of the same ancient population standing in the African sun, slowly spreading across an unpredictable planet, carrying written in melanin the precise record of every environment their descendants passed through. If you want to know, you know what to do.